Welcome to Detonation Point. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill. I was with the U.S. Secret Service for 25 years and retired as the Deputy Special Agent in charge of the Cyber Operations part of the Criminal Investigative Division. In Detonation Point, I'm going inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Today on Detonation Point, we're joined by Ayleen Charlotte, an internationally recognized voice in fraud awareness, resilience, and empowerment. Ayleen first came to the public eye through her powerful story in Netflix's The Tinder Swindler, which she courageously shared her experience with a sophisticated romance scam and profound lessons she learned from it. Instead of letting a painful chapter define her, Ayleen transformed it into purpose. She's become a leading advocate for scam prevention and survivor support, challenging how individuals, corporations, and institutions think about online fraud. Her work speaks volumes in the global initiatives on fraud education and pushing for systemic change to better protect people in the digital age. This episode dives deep into the psychology of trust and deception, the real impact of online scams, and what it takes to reclaim agency in a world where digital threats are ever evolving. Get ready for great insight, courage, and strategy. This is Detonation Point, presented by Elastio, with our great guest, Ayleen Charlotte. Ayleen, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy that we were able to find a time in this busy and chaotic weeks.
Yes, and as background for our listeners, Ayleen and I met back about a year and a half ago in Dubai at the JISEC conference and became fast friends from that point forward. And we were just talking about prior to how we found the only Italian restaurant in probably the world that doesn't have any red wine. And we're both still angry about that.
Yes, I was a bit shocked when we asked them, like, what is your best wine? And they said, well, we don't serve any. And we were like, shall we leave?
Yeah.
But we just ordered the whole menu. So yeah, it was a bit rude to leave. But yeah, I'm still in shock and I really cannot understand it. But maybe if we ever go back, then maybe they serve.
Yes, or we'll bring our own.
We can bring our own and we can sit somewhere else, drink it.
Yeah. So, and I sent this picture while I was in Dubai to my daughter, Sarah, who's joining us today. And Sarah immediately was impressed that I knew somebody famous, even though I spent 25 years around world leaders. You were the first one that made an impression on her. So, Sarah, I will let you lead off the conversation.
Yeah, Ayleen, again, thank you so much for joining us. Like he just mentioned, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Hopefully by now, people are well aware of your Netflix documentary, The Tinder Swindler. It blew up worldwide when it premiered in 2022. We all watched it. Everyone was talking about it. And it even became Netflix's most watched documentary in 90 countries with 166 million views in the first month. So just recently rewatched it, and the message was still incredibly powerful because of the courage shown by you and the other women involved. I love how you all came together to support one another and how you ultimately took some of your power back by swindling the Tinder swindler and helping to catch him. So just for some background to start off, for any listeners that might not have seen the documentary yet, although they should go watch it, and might not be familiar with your story, can you share a little background on your experience inside this notorious romance scam?
Yes, of course. And I'm going to keep it short because, as I always say, it's such a long story. If I'm going to share every single detail, we would be here for maybe 6 days. And in the documentary, my piece was only, I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks, which they shown. So they didn't show any of the starting point where I met him. Well, I met him on Tinder in November 2017, and we started chatting, and we did have a lot of fun. And I think it was beginning of January when we first met. I was in London for a meeting, and he was there too. And we met for a coffee, and I immediately felt that we had a very strong connection, and I felt very safe with him. And it was something I never felt with a guy before. So from there on, our connection started, and everywhere I go, he goes, because I traveled a lot for work. So when I went to Barcelona, he was there. When I went to Paris, he was there. When I went to Germany, he was there. When I went to London, he was there. Mm-hmm. And suddenly, after 7 months, he started to talk about his enemies. And because he was working in the diamond industry, it was a very dangerous business. And because of that, he had several enemies. And suddenly, after 7 months into our relationship, he lost a really big business deal. And because of that, his enemies were chasing him more than ever. And he said to me that if they didn't chase him, they would come to me. So he needed a safe address to live, and he needed a credit card which was not under his name. He needed SIM card which was not under his name, so he cannot be detected. So I gave him my house key, my credit card, all of my savings, and he sent me a wire transfer to cover all of it. But unfortunately, he was working on an operation, like he called them. These operations were where he could get our money back and where he could be safe from his enemies again. But every single time when he was working on an operation, he came to step 9 out of 10 and the operation failed. And I think after 10 months into the relationship, and under a lot of pressure, and also being worried about my life, being worried about the life of my friends and family, I also took out 2 big personal loans. And yeah, after 10 months into the relationship, I was like completely broken. And not only my body, myself, my mental health started to really lose it, but I was also completely empty in money. But he keeps on pressuring me, and eventually I lost over 180,000 euros. And he keeps on pressuring me because this is what he does. This is what fraudsters do. They keep on putting you into that state where you need to handle. Because if you go out of that state, it means that you're going to start think rationally again. And unfortunately, he asked me, I think it was unfortunate for him because he asked me to sell my house and to sell my car. But I have worked very hard to buy that house and to buy the car because I always wanted to be an independent, strong woman. And from then on, his stories became more and more in disbelief. And he didn't want to spend Christmas because he didn't have time and he was completely stressed. And at a certain point, after 14 months in the relationship, I was with him because he finally invited me to see him in Prague. And when I was there and I saw him, it felt like the amazing chemistry we always had before was completely gone. He was very distracted and he couldn't give me a clear answer on why he was not able to finish the operations or why he was not able to get back his money or to get back my money and to be safe again. So from the moment he dropped me off at the airport, I waved at him and I opened up my phone and I was on Instagram and I saw his picture turning up for the very first time, and it was connected to a Norwegian article and it was called Tinder Swindler. And in that article, Cecilia and Pernilla told their story on how they got defrauded by him and how they lost a lot of money. And from there on, I immediately knew everything what he did to me in that past 18 months, all the manipulation, all the fraud, and I knew I lost everything. So then I started to file my police report. Well, at least I tried, because I had to take 3-4 different tries to finally file a police report because they didn't took me seriously and they constantly sent me away. And I also contacted the banks to see whatever I could recover from it. But unfortunately, they told me that I transferred the money myself, so it was my own mistake. And then I knew that I had less options to go with. So because I was still in contact with him, even when I knew I was defrauded, I came up with a very brilliant plan, which I thought it was brilliant, because he keeps on pressuring me to get more money. So I said, you bought like so many Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Dolce Gabbana. And I say, you have so much money in your luggage. Why are you not giving it to me? Because I know this business. I know this area. I know where to sell it. And that's where we can get money from. And he was very enthusiastic. He immediately started to send me pictures of everything he had. And then he sent me a ticket to come and pick it up to Prague. So I went to Prague and he showed me a picture of his new identity name. So I took a picture of that as well. When I met him, I still had to pretend we were boyfriend and girlfriend, very lovey-dovey. but I was on a mission, and I only had one mission. And I traveled back to Amsterdam with 3 suitcases, and they were loaded up to 33 kilos each. And even until today, I still don't know how I did it, but I did it. And when I was home, I immediately started to iron everything, and I was selling everything. But of course, I never sent any money to him. And then I also shared his new identity with the police. And I found out through a lot of Googling and knowing his steps at that time. And I knew how he was communicating. So I knew that when he didn't respond to me, and he also already shared a few stories about an operation in Greece. So I found out that when my messages were on one tick, I was tracking his flight, and I immediately knew that he was going to Greece, and that's where he was finally arrested by Interpol and the Dutch police. But unfortunately, he could only be arrested for having a fake passport and outstanding charges from Israel from 2010. Unfortunately, until today, nothing has been done with mine or the many cases and the many lives he has ruined until today. So yeah, that's a little bit of my story in a nutshell. I hope it was compact.
Yes.
So yeah.
You just said that you were on one mission. Was the mission to get as much money back as you can, or was the mission to get him arrested, or was the mission both?
Well, the first mission was I wanted some of my money back. And I saw on my credit card notes that he spent a lot of money in Louis Vuitton and Gucci. So I knew that a lot of the clothes he had were mine, basically. So, and I really wanted something back to avoid myself from drowning. But then I also found out his new identity name, and I was like, oh, maybe I could share this with the police, and maybe they could do something about it, because I know where he is, I know where he's going, I know what he's doing. I still had his SIM card, so I knew where he was. And then when he got arrested, I found out that it wasn't a real mission, but in the end, I was like, oh, I really helped him get arrested.
You mentioned at the end of the documentary that he wasn't aware that you were the person that provided his location to law enforcement, and he would only find out after watching the documentary. So I'm just curious, after that came out, did he ever try to get in contact with you or interact with you in any way because of that?
No.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe he's ashamed. I don't know.
Well, you outsmarted him at the end. So the other thing that I was interested about is you've been working a lot with victims and sharing your story. And a lot of what you do, I think, is we'll categorize it as educational for people. Looking back, is there something that you wish you had known, or a red flag that now, with time and distance from what happened and talking to survivors around the world of similar things, that you would be like, I would have known that now, but I didn't know it then? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And yes, there are a few red flags which I really wanted to know up front. And those are the pressure techniques fraudsters are using. But also, how can it be that I was able to get so much money for someone I basically just only knew for a few months? Well, I knew him for 8 months. So for me, it was a full relationship. But why? And what made me give away everything? And I think that it all had to do with all the manipulation techniques, but I didn't see them at that time. The only thing I was doing was surviving, helping him survive, and acting. And I really wish that I know that, like, for example, the gaslighting he used, the love bombing he used, and the pressure. And with pressure, I mean that he never made me think rational. He always wanted to get me out of that rational thinking. And that's, I think, what I wish I know now. Well, what I know now and not then is I wish I went to someone to ask for advice. And this is one of the biggest advice I'm giving to people who are getting money requests from someone. Please go to someone, check your story, talk to someone, and please say no, because that's what fraudsters hate. Because if, for example, I'm with my best friend and she asks me, I don't know, maybe for 1,000 euros, and I will say to her, like, hey, can I maybe think about it for 2 weeks? She will say, of course, I understand you. I respect you, and But this is not happening with fraudsters because they always want the money yesterday instead of tomorrow. And that's when the love bombing, the gaslighting, the threats come all together. Yeah, I really wish I had known those steps and those red flags sooner.
So he winds up getting sort of a de minimis sentence. From your personal experience and then dealing with other victims now, how important is a punitive sentence to victims? And does it depend on the circumstances? In my 25 years, I ran the gamut from real anger if a sentence was lighter than perceived. Others just wanted to move on. Some were more concerned about getting their money back. Is there any kind of common thread? Because in law enforcement, once the conviction happens, we're not really involved in the sentencing, kind of move on to something else. What can we learn from your experience and your now what you do to help inform law enforcement as well about like how is the impact of these sentences on victims?
The sentences could be very strong, and I think it would be really great if we start working towards sentences against fraudsters, because I think the numbers are 0.05% are getting convicted. And this is what I'm fighting for as well, because I really want people to take this crime serious. Because there's too much suicide, there's too much harm to the victims. And in a latest report, which was launched in the Netherlands a few months ago, fraud is stated as much bigger impact than a physical break-in. But why aren't we not treating it as a high impact crime? And this is where I really want to fight for. And because these fraudsters, I think the sentences really need to go up. Because what we as society and also law enforcement need to understand is they are completely ruining lives and families. And because we are not taking this very serious, the healing process of a fraud victim is only getting longer because we're not treating it in the right manner. And this is why there's still so much harm. This is why there's still so much suicidal thoughts, PTSD symptoms, depression, going into a negative spiral. And yeah, so I think getting a sentence for your fraudster could be very, very helpful. I think a few months ago, Simon got arrested in Georgia. I felt relieved, and it wasn't even for my case, but at least he was behind bars, you know? At least there was something done on everything he's doing. But unfortunately, he got released because of a plea deal, and now he's out there again, ruining more lives. And he's still out there on the news. He's still out there doing podcasts. He's still out there doing interviews. He's talking really bad about us as girls. These actions as well sometimes make people think or not taking us seriously as victims, because he's constantly out there. Nobody's arresting him. Nobody's convicting him. Nobody's getting to him. And we are still sharing our stories. But yeah, how can people take me seriously if he's constantly just free when he's a free man? And this is what I'm fighting for as well, because I really think that we should do something about it.
You mentioned that you've received some like negative feedback or uninformed feedback as a victim on social media and from him directly, it seems. But I think the importance of sharing your story not only puts humanity back into these types of crimes, but like you said, it highlights how deeply it affects people and how easily it can happen to anyone. So do you think that sharing your story is helping to change the way that the public views victims of romance scams?
Yes, absolutely. And this is why I do what I do, because the negative comments make me motivated more than the positive comments, because all the negative comments I had make me realize that there's a lot of people in our society who don't know how devastating this is and how devastating fraud in general is. So that made me really motivated to talk about it and to start sharing this story and to make people realize what victims have to go through and how harmful it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we saw that firsthand in Dubai when that asshole started challenging you. You remember that? That one guy? I think he was trying to blame you, or it
Yeah.
was insane.
I was on stage and he stood up and said to me, well, it's not fraud because you were in a relationship. So why are you on stage? And I was like, I never had a question like that before. He was very blaming, but I think he came from India.
Oh, that's
And
right.
I know
Yes.
that everything what happens in a marriage is legal. Which is not a crime. So I spoke to him after when I came off stage and I said to him, well, first of all, I wasn't married, so it wasn't a marriage. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I don't want to be harmful to anyone, but I come from the West, I come from the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, this is a crime. This is fraud. This is manipulation. This is coercion. But yeah, you were right. I forgot about that.
I remember. I couldn't believe the guy. So I have three questions. Sorry, Sarah. I'll ask all of them at the same time. First question is, do you see a trend, at least it was my experience, that fraudsters are overly detailed in their lying about what they're doing, and they provide a lot more details? And is that something that you see as a red flag? The second is, it sounds like Simon was stealing to fund a lifestyle, and compare and contrast that to some of the West African romance scam victims that are like in a factory. And do you see any difference there? And then the last question is related to his sentencing or a challenge of prosecution. Was the international component the biggest challenge, where in the Netherlands, if you live in the Netherlands, it didn't take place in the Netherlands, took place maybe in Prague? How much did that factor into some of the challenges of him not being prosecuted in your specific case? So sorry for the compound question.
What was the first one again?
I don't remember.
Um,
It was a technical,
Yes.
like the level of detail.
Yes, he was sharing a lot of details, and his stories were, sorry if I'm going to say this, but I find it very smart because he was very consistent in his stories, but he talked a lot. But I only found out after because I've been through all the messages a million times again. And now I see what he actually did. He was constantly trying to convince me. He was constantly trying to convince me of his story. And if we have a conversation, just like now, if you don't believe me, I'm like, okay, but I'm not going to convince you like, yeah, but it really happened. And this happened too. And I'm going to show you the evidence because it actually happened. No, I don't have to because that's not in my nature. But this is what in a lot of fraudsters' nature is. They constantly oversharing in a way because they want to convince you that it's real. And this guy, and I need to be honest, I think Simon is really sick. So I always say and make a joke about it, like if you say to him that he's the prince of Zimbabwe and you say this to him 25 times, then maybe he starts believing it, like this is how sick he is. And this is the story. He's going to own that story. But I think on your second question, do I see comparison in the compounds and the romance scams and the Yahoo boys in Africa? I think yes, because they all spend it on like a sort of lavish lifestyle. They always want to show off. But I think that part, especially in Africa and also when it comes to Southeast Asia, I think it's changing a little bit because we see these compounds and the people who are defrauding are not the masterminds anymore. It's becoming like a very big criminal organization. There are a few television shows in the Netherlands as well, and every single time when they are catching these fraudsters who actually did the fraud, you can see that they don't have the money. They don't own the money. So I see a lot of difference changing there. What was the last one again? Oh my God.
The international component, the challenges of that for prosecution.
Yes. Yeah, it was definitely a big one because it happened in a lot of countries. There are a lot of police reports in a lot of countries, and he's Israeli. So what Europe needed to do is to get all of these police reports together in one country and then ask for an extradition. But I tried in the Netherlands together with the police force. I filed my police report. We tried, but our government didn't want to take the case, unfortunately, because it was too big, it was too international, it was too much hustle. So they left it out and they gave it to Europol. But for Europol, it was very difficult as well. Basically, what I found out now is that maybe they didn't know how to handle this case. And sometimes for me, it feels like, how were you not able to do this? But I see a lot of difficult components as well. So yeah, and I really hope that with sharing our story, with putting the lens on him, that they finally going to act, because he's still making victims.
So given his way of scamming people and his avenue of fraud is social media platforms like Tinder, I'm curious, how do you view social media now? Do you feel hostility towards it, or do you now just see it as a tool to share your story, your growth, and reach your audience?
Well, I find social media very challenging because you have a lot of people who started to follow me, like for example on Instagram, because of the Tinder swindler. But when I share a lot of things about fraud, nobody watch it. And then LinkedIn become my biggest focus, and my Instagram just became just like very casual. But when we look at social media, I think they can do a lot more against scams. But we don't have to start this discussion because we already know, and the whole world knows this.
That's got to be frustrating, I would imagine, because most of the time when I talk to victims in, say, crypto investment scams, they claim to be knowledgeable on scams, but they're really not. And we're running into this challenge where when you go into like LinkedIn, it's almost like this circle of people that are already somewhat knowledgeable to a degree, but we're not really penetrating the average person. Sarah pointed out to me that the Tinder swindler does do that. It seems like, is it in the storytelling? What can we do collectively to get people more educated and informed on scams? And then along those lines, can you kind of give all the listeners kind of about what you're doing with scam awareness and fraud education?
Yes, of course. Well, I think that, like you said, the documentary, I think that was the biggest awareness we could create. And I think we need to have more of these. And I think that's the reason why the documentary was really well watched, is because it's a good story, but it's also very well made. So I think that was a combination. And I know this is a very interesting, but also very shocking story. So I think that attracted a lot of people, but also a lot of people can relate to it, because this can happen to anyone. Anyone can meet someone on Tinder, fall in love, and get defrauded. I mean, it's so easy. And I think this was the biggest awareness we could ever create. And what I do now, because everything after the documentary, organizations and banks and financial institutions, government agencies, they ask me to share my story and to do keynotes and readings. And every single time when I was finished this reading, they ask me like, hey, but how do we talk to victims of fraud? Or how do we understand them? Or how do we break the spell? And I was like, you have all the billions in the world and you are asking me, which I find a very big honor. But that was the moment when I thought, okay, maybe I should do something with it. And that's when I started Scam Awareness and Fraud Education. And I created 5 training modules for organizations and government agencies on how to deal better with fraud victims, how to understand them better, and how to break the spell. Now I'm also working together with the United Nations because this is the business I created, or the training I do for the financial institutions and law enforcement. But now I'm also working on an educational project together with the United Nations on how to implement more fraud education into our society, how we can maybe better protect ourselves, and how we give more readings to people who actually need it. So in elderly homes or at schools. And I want more educational books at schools. I want people to understand what fraud is, how it works, because I did a lot of research and I found out that basically they use the same techniques in every single different type of fraud. And if we learn this, then we can better protect ourselves as well.
Another thing that I heard you're doing, you have your own wine company that you started. So definitely very busy. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What inspired you to create that brand?
Yes. Well, I always wanted to have like something which was part of me, but I also wanted something which was very close to me. And that's when I thought, you know what, I'm going to start my own wine label because I love wine. It was always my passion. I have two friends who is a wine expert and she's a designer, and they also have a beautiful wine shop in Amsterdam, and they also have a few wines in their own collection which they created. So I asked him, I said, do you want to work together, because I maybe want to create my own wine label? And they were immediately like, yes, of course, we want to. So that's how it all started. And I'm a little bit in a niche market because I wanted to show to people that natural wines are unfiltered wines are like the best wines there are, because there's no pesticides in, there's no sulfites or harmful processed ingredients in it. And I wanted to do unfiltered wines because I already shared my story. My story is I'm very unfiltered. So I also wanted my wines to be unfiltered. So yeah, that's on the market now. And unfortunately, I'm only selling in Europe due to all the legislation.
A Europe trip might be in order, and try some of these wines in Amsterdam.
You know it.
Absolutely.
You know it. Also, now you know why we were so pissed off in Dubai that they didn't have wine. When you're having dinner with the owner of a wine label, you got to have some good wine, and they had Zippy. One of the things that concerns me about fraud, and especially social engineering impersonation, is the rampant use of AI. How do you talk to victims, and what is your general thought about it when we're having this conversation in a year, 2, 3 years? Is it a little different because of the ease of entry and the ability to use AI for whether it's deep fakes or whether it's to impersonate other people and whatnot? Is that something that's front and center on your radar of concern?
Yes, absolutely. I think we need to be aware that anybody can get cloned in a way. So I really think we should upgrade our education on AI as well, because I can see the difference. But sometimes with some videos, I barely see the difference. If you don't have much knowledge on it, how can you see the difference? And I don't know if you heard the story on this French woman who just got out of a divorce with her husband, and she fell in love with Brad Pitt. And the whole world was so ugly to her. But what they didn't understand was that she truly believed it. She truly believed the story. And we can use AI to attack the bad AI, but sometimes we are still a few steps behind. And this is where we need to evolve in as well. And the education part, because there are a lot of educational tools to go against fraud, and also to learn more about fraud when it comes to AI. But I think we should also use it in a good way to attack the bad actors who are using AI against us.
Yeah, and it seems like that's definitely something that we're going to have to do, is fight AI with AI. And also at the end of the day with social engineering, it's those other techniques that you mentioned, the gaslighting, constant stress, the immediacy, like those things aren't going to change. So it might be more difficult to know who you're engaging with. But at the end of the day, if you stick to the basic fundamentals of the tactics, techniques, procedures that fraudsters use, they're going to still use those. So if you're educating folks, are you telling them, don't worry as much about the tech, focus on sort of like the communication? Is that something that might be helpful?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why I also created the SAFE method, which is stop, ask, feel, and engage. So with stop, it means like, if you get a request, or if you get this weird spontaneous text from someone on LinkedIn or a message, then please stop what you're doing, breathe, just look at it again. Then when we go to ask, is like verify whatever you get, verify the person, verify the URL, verify the web host or the page, or check the number who's calling you. So verify. And then we go to feel, because most of the time what fraudsters do is they make you feel rushed, because they're going to play with your oxytocin, your adrenaline. They are combined, and these are the feelings which are going to make you act. But if you are feeling rushed, I mean, nobody should feel rushed when you're buying something. Nobody should feel rushed when you are in contact with someone. You shouldn't feel rushed if someone ask you to borrow some money. So this is where you need to feel with yourself, like, hey, how do I feel? And if I step away from the situation, will I still feel the same, or will I calm down? And then I have the E, which stands for engage, which means like bring someone into the conversation or into the story. Like I just said in the beginning of our conversation, engage with someone like, hey, I just got this request and this is the story behind it. What do you think about it? Or how would you feel when this happened to you? Or could you advise me? And these 4 steps, they're very easy, but I think it can really protect a lot of potential victims from fraud. Because if we're looking, like, for example, on web pages which are fraudulent, fraudsters are using the same techniques in physical but also online. So they use the grooming part, where you can see it's an amazing offer, or it has such an amazing discount, or you need to buy now, otherwise you will lose it. Then comes the gaslighting. So for example, there's a timer, like there's always a timer or some pressure, and if you say no, then comes the gaslighting and the grooming part again. So this is the love bombing again, because then they're going to send you a text like, hey, for you, this offer is still available, but you need to buy it now, or you need to do it now. And you need to type in your credit card details now. And when you did, then yeah, it's a fraud. But I really think that if you are taking the time in these steps, like, hey, this person is asking me for money, or hey, this advertising is pressuring me, or someone is pressuring me to pay to put in my credit card details or to transfer money or whatever, then I need to engage with someone. Like, hey, what do you think? Or like when it's online, you can verify the email address and you can type it in, for example, scamadvisor.com, and check the URL. And then 9 out of 10 times it will turn out to be fraud. And I really think that if we go back to this rational thinking and to verify, to engage, to ask, to stop, that's how we can really prevent the fraud.
And it seems like as well, there's a lot of parallels to business email compromises to some degree, where it's a matter of urgency, and especially like in a CEO impersonation, it's urgency, it's a level of detail, and then it's also, I'm going to be unavailable. It's going to happen, Friday at 4:30. I need you to send this money. I'm going to be unavailable by the time I get to wherever I'm going on Monday. It better be there. And then that puts that level of stress upon the person. It doesn't give them the ability to try to challenge in a respectful manner. This doesn't make sense. And that's why they're so successful. So when I hear you talk about the SAFE method, the thing that makes me think about like the corollaries in business email compromise, they're kind of similar, right? I mean, the tactics that they're using are not all that different.
No, and this is exactly the same with like the physical fraud I experienced, because like I just said, I've been through the messages like 1,000,000 times, and every single time I did almost 21 transactions. And when I parallel the transactions with the conversation, I see the same thing coming back again. It's the love bombing, the gaslighting, the pressure and threats, and then the love bombing again. Because in the beginning, it's like, oh my God, darling, you are the most beautiful woman in the world. I love you so much. You are the only one I can go to. So this is the grooming. Then comes, I need the money now. I want you to get this money. I know you're broke. I know, but we have to do this. We have to do this because we will lose everything. And then I will say like, no, I'm sorry, I don't have. I'm empty. And then comes the threat part and the pressure. Like, hey, but if you don't do this, I'm going to kill myself. If you don't do this, then my enemies will attack your parents, or they will follow you and they will attack you, blah, blah, blah. So that's when you start handling again. That's when you start acting again, like, oh, but I don't want him to kill himself, or I don't want him to hurt himself or my parents, or I don't want to get hurt. So that's when you start acting. And then when I did the transaction, that's when oh my God, I love you so much. You're the most amazing person. We are going to make it again. And this is a pattern. This is what happens in online fraud. It happens in CEO fraud. And like I just said in the beginning, they always want the money yesterday than tomorrow.
Mhm.
But the reason why is because when you take a few steps back and you start thinking rationally again, then of course you're going to say no. So they always want you in that state of act. And it's the same online. It's the same in the CEO fraud. It's in every single fraud. And this is the red flag I wanted to know as well. And I wanted to know like very easy steps how I could maybe protect myself sooner. So this is what I started to work on. And yeah, I think it could really, really help if we only are teaching ourselves those 4 words. It could be so much better.
And it sounds like it's empowerment too. What you're really teaching is empowering people as well, in many to stand up for themselves and to really take that step back. To your point, a friend asks you for money. Hey, let me think about it.
Yeah. And if you say things like that, like, oh, let me think about it, or, ooh, I need to wait, ooh, I'm going to call back the bank, or I'm going to check with my husband, or, ooh, I'm going to check with my best friend, or then 9 out of 10 times comes the pressure because they don't want that. They really
Yeah.
don't want that. And that's when we spoke about it before, when you asked me like the convincing. But even that should be a red flag, because then you should think like, oh, okay, no, but I'm still going to ask my husband, or I'm
Yeah.
going to ask my friend, or I'm going to check it again. Let me call you back. And that's not what they want. So the pressure becomes more and more, and the threats, and it all comes together. Because I know that there's a lot of awareness and there is a lot of tools on how to detect fraud, but also how to try to make fraud less. But unfortunately, until today, the numbers are still rising.
Yeah.
So we still have a lot to do. I know we have so many tools, but it's still rising. So we shouldn't check only the statistics or the numbers or the transactions, but we need to talk to the people, because they are the ones who are manipulated, not my bank account. My bank account is not manipulated, but I am. And I really think that if we are getting that human factor in this conversation back again.
That's why it's so great seeing you at all the conferences globally, so you can help educate victims, potential victims, financial institutions about it, because the dismissiveness that some people have towards what they'll call authorized push payment fraud, where you authorize the payment, you're still a victim. I think we're starting to get more conversations going, largely from yourself and victims like you. So if you are a financial institution, or if you are somebody that is starting a conference, how can people find you?
Well, with my email address on LinkedIn and on Instagram, just only type in Ayleen Charlotte, A Greek Y L-E-E-M, and then Charlotte, and you can find me everywhere.
Perfect. Sarah, do you have any last questions before I have a really bad dad joke that I want to see if Ayleen knows?
Oh, God. Can't wait for that. Yeah, I guess to wrap it up, it's been 3 years since the documentary is released. You seem very successful today, and you kind of transformed this tragic experience into personal and professional empowerment. So I know you provided a lot of advice and framework for potential victims, but if there's somebody that's in the thick of it right now and going through emotional turmoil, do you have a message that you would like to share with them?
Well, with the thing I really want to say to people who are maybe in a situation where they are giving money to someone, please share your story. Please talk to someone. Because when you are going to engage with someone, we all feel ashamed. Saying of Oscar Wilde, a person suffers most from the suffering they fear. And this is what happened when shame comes. And this is the reason why we are not talking, because we're always afraid of what someone else would think. but everyone wants to help you. You know, like if you are in a bad situation, if you are in trouble, everyone wants to help you. So please, if you are in a situation like this, if you are sending money to someone, or if you are investing in something and you don't know 100% sure, please engage with someone. Please talk to someone, your best friend, your partner, your family member, because they can take you out of this and they can help you and they can also support you during the aftermath. But please engage, because that's, I think, the biggest tip I can ever give. Don't be afraid of what people think.
Ayleen, we'll leave with a joke. 50-50. You've heard this joke before.
Yes.
Sarah said, "Don't ask it," but I'm like, she'll think it's funny, or maybe not. What do you? It's really stupid. What do you call a one-legged woman?
I don't know.
Ayleen. Terrible. See, this is what Sarah's had to live with for 22 years. Just really stupid. See, thought you'd like
I remember it was when we had the conversation. Was it in Scotland where you said, "Oh, I'm such a big fan of dad jokes," but I don't know if that's okay with you.
Yeah, well, when you have two daughters that you try to make laugh all the time, that's what I go to, the dumbest jokes possible. Anyway, so, well, Ayleen, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Really powerful conversation about trust, resilience, and what happens after the blast. If this one made you guys think, please share it. This is what we're trying to get the word out to everyone. Ayleen's provided amazing tips, and you know how to reach her. You know how to reach us. So please share the show. Reach out to Ayleen. If you're hosting any and have any responsibility in bringing in guest speakers, there's nobody better than her. And I've seen it all around the world. And so, again, thank you so much to Ayleen and to Sarah for joining us. And we'll see you next week on Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Thank you.
Thank you so much.